I had always been an adventurous spirit. So when my friends suggested a camping trip deep in the heart of the woods, I eagerly agreed. Little did I know that this would be a journey that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. We arrived at the campsite late in the afternoon. The dense trees cast eerie shadows as we set up our tents. The air grew colder with every passing hour, and the rustling leaves seemed to whisper secrets I couldn't quite grasp. But I brushed it off, attributing my unease to the unfamiliarity of the wilderness. As night descended, we gathered around a crackling campfire, sharing stories and laughter. But the darkness beyond the fire's glow was oppressive, and the forest's symphony of strange sounds began to unsettle us. The eerie calls of owls and the distant howls of coyotes echoed through the trees. I decided it was time to turn in for the night, crawling into my sleeping bag within the safety of my tent. I closed my eyes, attempting to push away the growing sense of dread. But sleep proved elusive. Sometime in the dead of night, I was awakened by a soft, eerie melody that seemed to emanate from the very woods themselves. It was a haunting, otherworldly tune that sent shivers down my spine. I unzipped my tent cautiously, peering out into the inky blackness. I saw her. A young girl, no older than 12, with long, matted hair and a tattered white nightgown. She stood at the edge of the campfire's glow, swaying gently as she sang that haunting melody. Her voice was ethereal, carrying a strange mixture of sorrow and malice. I couldn't move. Fear held me in its icy grip as I watched her draw nearer, her eyes black voids in the pale moonlight. Her ghostly form seemed to float above the forest floor as she approached, her bony fingers reaching out. My friends were still asleep, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding before me. I wanted to scream, to wake them, but my voice had abandoned me. The girl stood at the entrance of my tent now, her hollow gaze fixing on mine. Her voice grew louder, her song more menacing. I could feel the presence of something malevolent surrounding her. And then, with a sudden, chilling grin, she reached out and touched my cheek. I gasped, the sound finally escaping my paralyzed throat, and my friends awoke, panic in their eyes. But as they shone their flashlights in every direction, the girl was nowhere to be found. She had vanished, leaving only a haunting memory and an unshakable sense of dread. We packed up our campsite in record time and hiked back to civilization as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. None of us spoke much on the way back, haunted by the inexplicable encounter with that spectral girl in the woods. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that she's still out there, lurking in the shadows of those dark woods, waiting for another unsuspecting soul to stumble into her realm.
I had always been an outdoors enthusiast, relishing the thrill of camping and the serenity of the wilderness. But one fateful camping trip deep in the woods would forever change the way I viewed the natural world. My friends and I had chosen an isolated spot for our adventure, miles away from civilization. The forest was dense, and the trees seemed to press in on us, casting long, menacing shadows as we set up our campsite. The air grew chilly, and the distant hoots of owls sent shivers down my spine, but I brushed it off as the typical eeriness of the woods at night. As darkness fell, we huddled around the campfire, swapping stories and jokes to chase away the encroaching fear. The forest seemed alive with strange noises, and the rustling leaves and occasional snaps of twigs underfoot only added to the unsettling atmosphere. Eventually, it was time to retire for the night. I crawled into my tent, feeling the weight of the forest's secrets all around me. But sleep proved elusive. Sometime in the early hours, I was awakened by an ominous rustling outside my tent. My heart raced as I listened to the faint sound of whispering voices carried by the wind. I unzipped my tent cautiously, peering into the moonlit darkness. I saw them. A group of people, dressed in tattered clothing and masks, were gathered around the smoldering remains of our campfire. Their eerie, whispered chants sent shivers down my spine. They moved with an unnatural, synchronized grace, their masked faces devoid of expression. I couldn't make out their intentions, but the sight filled me with dread. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to call out to my friends who were asleep in their tents nearby. The chanting grew louder and more frenetic, and the masked figures seemed to be performing some kind of ritual around our campfire. Panic surged through me as I realized I was completely alone, cut off from my friends and surrounded by this sinister congregation. One of them, wearing a mask adorned with twisted horns, turned and locked eyes with me. I felt a cold, malevolent presence wash over me as he raised a finger to his lips in a gesture of silence. I retreated into my tent, heart pounding, and stayed hidden there, praying for morning to come. Eventually, the chanting outside ceased, and the forest fell silent once more. As dawn broke, I emerged from my tent to find our campfire reduced to ashes, and my friends still asleep, oblivious to the terror that had unfolded during the night. I woke them, and we packed up in haste, leaving the woods behind. To this day, I can't explain the chilling encounter with those masked figures in the woods, and I shudder to think about what sinister purpose their ritual may have held. It was a camping trip I would never forget, a reminder that sometimes, deep in the heart of the wilderness, there are secrets that should remain undiscovered.
Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed these stories. If you ever want to submit your own for the channel, you can send them to our email at the.taboo.authors@gmail.com. Thanks so much, you guys. Bye.